Constitutional Conversations is a series of discussions by America's leading scholars about the principles framing, ratification, and implementation of constitutional government in the United States. This series is hosted by the James Madison Memorial Fellowship Foundation, an agency of the federal government established by Congress to improve teaching about the United States Constitution.
Welcome to our online audience to the latest Constitutional Conversation, hosted by the federal government's James Madison Foundation, an independent agency created by Congress during the bicentennial of the Constitution, which is dedicated to the promotion and dissemination of knowledge regarding the United States Constitution. This multi-year series has captured on film many of the leading constitutional scholars, and today we're privileged to have Professor H.W. Brands join us, the Jack S. Blanton Senior Chair in History at the University of Texas at Austin. Dr. Brands is the author of over 30 books, 2 of which have been finalists for the Pulitzer Prize. Today we'll be discussing his latest with the antiquarian, but I suspect intentionally relevant title, Founding Partisans, Hamilton, Madison, Jefferson, Adams, and the Brawling Birth of American Politics. Dr. Brands, welcome.
Nice to be with you, Jeff.
Well, let's begin, if we may, with the scope of the book and why you chose to write it.
I had written a book fairly recently on the American Revolutionary War, and I wanted to see what happened next. Now, I've been teaching American history for a long time. I know what happened next, but I wanted to get into it and sort of to draw out some of the themes that emerged in my book on the Revolutionary War, which I called provocatively, I hope, our first Civil War, which underlined the divisions that afflicted America during the Revolutionary War. And I wanted to see what happened after the war had ended. So I pick up the story, really actually in the late stages of the Revolutionary War, when 2 of my protagonists, Alexander Hamilton and James Madison, are growing increasingly dissatisfied with the way the federal government, in those days essentially Congress, was operating. And they began to think, what can we do to fix this? What will happen if we don't fix this? So they begin then, while the Revolutionary War is still on, victory over Britain is not yet won, but thinking, planning, how can we make this new government better? So I pick up the story there. My story kicks into high gear with the attempt, eventually successful, to convene a constitutional convention, to write the Constitution, and then I carry it forward through the first decade and a little bit of operation under the new Constitution, the Constitution of 1787. And it covers basically, the heart of my story is from about 1785 to 1800, or 1801. I get Thomas Jefferson inaugurated.
In the Second American Revolution, as he called it.
Yes, indeed, yes. So, and what I wanted to find out is, in the first place, so what became of these differences of opinion that I identified during the Revolutionary War? And part of the answer is, well, the loyalists, sort of the most attached to the opposition, most of them left. But that didn't mean that everybody who was left behind agreed. And there were still deep divisions about what the nature of government should be. And it was aligned with this moment in history when all the people involved realized that they were doing something that almost nobody had done before, and that is to create a republic, create the institutions of republican government, just de novo. Nearly every other government on earth had evolved, had emerged organically. It grew out of something that came before. But with the break from Britain, first the states, and then the Confederation of the States, and then the Union of the States, they had to figure out, how are we going to do this stuff? And one of the things that I try to recapture in the book, and I do this with my teaching as well, is to remind my readers that nobody knew how this was going to turn out. They were really just kind of finding their way forward, just one step at a time. And we know how it turned out. We're about to celebrate the 250th anniversary of American independence, and then shortly after that will be the 250th of the Constitution. They had no idea, first of all, that American independence was going to last a quarter millennium, And I think they would have been quite stunned to think that their Constitution would have lasted that long, because by the time the people that I focus on got around to writing the Constitution that was written in 1787, well, the country was on its second constitution, and the states all had their own constitution, so there was this flurry of constitution writing. And they had a chance to try out different ideas, but nobody could yet tell how these different ideas had played out. And so they gave it their best shot. And we are still living with the consequences of it. It was a pretty good shot, but there were some problems, and the problems emerged sort of right away.
Constitutional Conversations is made possible by a generous grant from the Fairleigh S. Dickinson Jr. Foundation. Constitutional Conversations is made possible by the James Madison Education Fund.